Welcome back to Kerbal Space Program Sandbox mode. I'm going to have to be specifying that in the future because there is now also a career mode series. In any event, when last we saw our hero build, he was still stuck on the surface of Duna in a crippled ship that crash landed, and he was fortunate enough to survive the crash. And there had recently been an attempt to rescue him, and the rescue ship crashed. And so now we will adjourn to the vehicle assembly building, where there is plans in place to remedy this situation. Okay, here we are. Now, I had actually recorded this episode before, but there were problems and the video files came out really bad, so I'm resorting to a backup. And then of course E-020 came out, and so I moved the backup save and all of the mod installations over to a copy of E-022, and everything seems to work. So there we go. One of the things I had developed for that ship was a rover, and here is the development installation. The development version is just attached to a capsule, inverted so that I could actually work on it. And what we've got here is a basic rover, 6 wheels, 6 parachutes, 1 command seat, a couple of RTGs to generate power, batteries to hold power, and also to provide a little bit of balancing, because in the original test video, which I'm not using because it's corrupted, the test landing had this thing coming down nose first, so I put a little bit more weight in the back with the battery packs. Also added a reaction wheel unit to the drive section. Now this section here, from this stack separator on down, will be jettisoned shortly before actual touchdown. And now let's do something I've been wanting to do for a long time in vanilla, well, with built-in KSP functionality. I'm going to take this thing and drop it into the sub-assembly zone. Duna Rover 1. Made to rescue Bill, useful for many other things. Save. And now we have it as a sub-assembly. That is excellent. Alright, now let's load up the ship that's going to go there this time. The Fuel Factory Mark 7 and its launch vehicle. And here we are, after a brief reminder that KSP still is prone to crashing when changing scenes while Fraps is recording. So I will continue my practice of stopping my recording to change the scenes. Now here is this is the launch vehicle. This is the I believe it's from the Nova rocket family, or I forget what the name of it is, but it's one of those from the Kerbal Space Program forums, and it's a very good launch vehicle. And it's what's good about it is that it can launch 160 tons to orbit, which means that it can launch this thing all the way to orbit without using any of the fuel it carries. That's very good. You know, this thing does need a little bit of tweaking in its design. I think, however, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take this thing, the launch vehicle, and drop it in the sub-assemblies. How come that is? Oh, okay, it's taking a while. Alright. Now let's take our subassembly. Fasten it back on, and everything's good to go. Alright, now, the ship itself needs some work. I think we need to add some struts. Let's get the angle snap on. Alright. And let's include some from these tanks over to the central body. That should give it a little bit more structural integrity for when parachutes are deploying. Okay, speaking of parachutes, utility, parachutes. Yeah. We'll drop 4 more on top of the reaction wheels. And I'm wondering if maybe I should fasten those down. Because one of the things that happened in the test video that no one will ever see is that these, when the parachutes deployed, these reaction wheels were torn loose from the tanks. So let's see if we can strap them down a little bit. Alright, that should help. And now more parachutes. There. And there. Alright, now let's get all these things on the action group. There we go. Custom 4 parachute deployment. Okay. Alright, that should take care of that. Let's see, we need some more parachutes on here though. On this crew capsule, so that between these 2 on the main capsule and the 2 down here on the crew tank, the thing will actually have enough parachute capacity to land at a decent, slow, safe speed when there's Kerbals in here as well, on occasions when just this part will land and not the rest of the lander. Alright, that I think should help quite a bit. Now let's get these parachutes in the right place and staging. Take that off of there for a moment to get it out of my way. Yeah, I see those are in the wrong place. They all need to be moved up there. Okay. Save that. I'm going to add some launch stability enhancers to this thing, because it has a tendency to wobble when it first gets to the launch pad. Okay, and these need to come down here. Alright, that should hold a lot better. Alright, we need one more piece on this sub-assembly. Duna rover. Flip it over. Dock it onto the front end. Fuel Factory Mark 7 plus launch vehicle plus rover. Save. Alright. And now, let's get this thing out to the launch pad and take another shot at getting Bill off of Duna. Okay, there was two things that I forgot to do before heading to the launch pad. Number one, I forgot to set my MacJeb unit back on here. And while this ship can fly without it, I like having the information that MacJeb presents. And yes, I know there are other mods to present that information, but unlike MacJeb, they don't allow me to create a custom information window that has exactly the information I want on it. And Jeb does. And of course there's the Smart ASS steering functions as well. Anyway, the other thing I forgot to do was remove the crew, because the ship is going unmanned. Save, and now we head to the launch pad for real. Alright, here we are. Get oriented right. Let's drop the nav ball out of the way, zoom out, and make sure these outer engines have their gimbling turned off as soon as that becomes possible to do. Alright, gimbling turned off, SAS on, nav ball up. I notice that the runway lights are a lot more clearly visible now, and there's lights on a light on the tower up here shining on the launch pad. I like that. That's a nice touch. Alright. And now it's time for a slideshow to orbit. And what I'm going to do here is just go ahead and launch this thing, and I'll catch up with you in orbit, because this flight is going to take a while with the number of parts on this thing. It weighs 1,069 tons at liftoff, and it flies really, really slow. You can tell how long it takes to throttle up. Okay, and launch. Okay, as you can see, this is a lag fest. I'm not going to subject you all to the slideshow. We'll catch up with you in orbit. Alright, the ride to orbit is almost done. 4 minutes of flight time at a whopping 3 frames per minute. 3 frames per second, excuse me. It feels like 3 frames per minute, but not quite. Just about to ditch the final booster stage, and I'm going to go ahead and do that now. Actually, let's cut. We've got almost 4 minutes to apoapsis. Let's go ahead and drop a maneuver node. And get this thing set up for orbit. 108 by 174. That's too much. .108 by 46. 93 by 109. 103 by 112. Not perfect, but I'll take it. Okay. Let's move this sluggish whale over to the alignment and get ready to do the final burn. And the booster, I'm quite certain, is going to run out of fuel before the end of the burn. And in fact, before the periapsis comes up high enough so that it will actually re-enter. A nice, clean, no mess in orbit. As this thing takes forever to swing around. Fortunately, we have 3 minutes. Okay, we're coming around. Trying to stop and go back to the maneuver node because we've gone a little past it. I'll be glad when we separate from this thing and get away from it, our frame rate will go up. Okay, let's try this. Let's have Smart ASS assume node alignment and then turn it off, because there's just so much on this thing that, frankly, MacJeb can't fly it. But it's good for getting lined up with maneuver nodes. "11-second burn. 2.5 minutes to go. All right, let's turn that off and activate SAS and time warp. Get down there about T-6 or so and do this burn and get this thing on its way to Duna. Well, into orbit, which is the first step. Almost there. Get rid of that. We won't be needing it. You can see how long each individual second is taking to tick off. Still doing 3 frames per second. Let's burn off the last of the fuel in this thing. And then get rid of it. Stage it away. And light the nukes. And we can speed this up by activating the skipper as well. There, our launch vehicle will crash. Hopefully not in somebody's front yard, but it will crash. And we are on the way to orbit. And let's deploy the solar panels while we're at it. Frame rate should improve as we get away from the launch vehicle. Alright, 108 by 111 orbit. Looks good. Get rid of our maneuver node. Close that. We don't need it yet. Alright. Duna is target. And as you can see, Duna is way out of position. It's going to need to be ahead of Kerbal by about 45 degrees. I guess the best way to do that is to switch over to that other ship after I turn SAS off and not waste power. Switch over here. And let's time warp ahead until Duna is in something resembling the right position. A little hard to see from here, but I think we can manage it. Okay. Time warping, full speed. Alright, something I had actually forgotten about. This ship here is reaching a maneuver node on its journey to Moho. So let's have a look out here. And there it is. Okay, Moho is target. And if I recall correctly, this was a placeholder burn to see if we could get a Moho encounter for this ship. Separation 13,000 kilometers, okay. 14,000, that's going the wrong direction. There's a Moho encounter right there for 9 meters per second. Alright. We'll go ahead and get lined up and we'll burn it. Okay, we're 15 minutes out. Let's just go ahead and warp in and do this. And I'm assuming that with a 9 meter per second burn, we can burn pretty much right almost at the node. I have to admit, though, I have rather serious doubts that this ship can actually land on Moho. We might just turn this into an impactor. Bear in mind, there is no crew aboard. That might be easier than actually breaking into orbit. Alright. Down here to time. Let's just burn it. Okay. We have a Moho encounter with a periapsis of 8,000 kilometers, almost 9,000. Let's set an alarm for sphere of influence change, and let's give it 1 hour, actually. An hour of lead time. Alright, close that, close this. Duna is not yet in the right position, so we'll just continue our time warp. And we get to deal with the Moho ship again. Okay. The delta V required to get this thing into orbit is going to be far more than what this ship has available. I'm actually pretty sure of that. No. That came out as a year early. And you see the little dot that shows up on the orbit line? It's purple, which means it's actually referring to this orbit next year. And we don't want that. But I can't seem to get one that will show me the current orbit. So we have to wait until sphere of influence. So let's get it over with. Hopefully by not time warping too fast. All right. Maneuver at periapsis, and we might actually move that back. What I don't see here is Moho itself. All right. That's not reducing the periapsis at all. Alright, clear that out to 0. And just do full retro burn. The ship has 3,221 meters per second available. And I'll bet you that if we use all of it, it still will not achieve Moho orbit. Or even anything close to it. Yeah, it barely even slows down. The resulting solar orbit is something like this. So what I'm going to do delete the maneuver node, and I'm going to set another alarm for when the ship reaches apoapsis. Oh yeah, well, let's do what I know is going to happen. We'll just zip past Moho's sphere of influence. And now there is an apoapsis to add. And we can forget about this ship for now. And next time around we'll see if we can crash it into Moho. But for right now, let's get some time warping going on and get into position for the Duna launch. And by the way, this is one of those long recording sessions, so somewhere around 30 minutes or so, 30 to 35 minutes at the most, I will be cutting out and picking it up in the next episode. This recording session is probably going to go for all the way until Duna reaches the lander, or well, the lander reaches Duna and Bill actually gets aboard. At least that's the plan. Alright, we're looking pretty close here. So let's head back to our ship and get a course plotted for Duna. Alright, here we are. Back at our Kethane mining rover combination. Looking pretty good. Alright, let's have a look out here. Alright, set Duna as target. Alright. I think we got a decent shot now. Put our burn over about here. Begin adding delta V and see if we can maneuver this thing to Duna with minimal BS.